This is an Alaskan mill. I'll be making a video or videos about turning a log into slabs and then turning those slabs into lumber and then turning lumber into a finished product. And before I do that and show the process of how I work, I wanted to show the tools that I use, how it came about, and give some other tips and tricks and multiple tangents, I'm sure. But to start it off, this is an Alaskan mill. An Alaskan mill is essentially a portable sawmill that is attached to a chainsaw. The chainsaw, for anyone that doesn't know what a chainsaw is this piece here, along with this is the bar. The mill is this nice shiny aluminum that attaches to the bar via two pins that cause pressure against a plate on the backside of the frame of the mill. Let's start with the mill itself. The mill is a Gramberg G777. It is one of the smallest mills they make. They're not a sponsor. I actually did the research probably 3 to 4 years ago, and this is the mill that I bought because this saw is the saw that I had, and I needed something to fit it. After doing all the research, the one thing that I can say is at one point in time I thought about building my own mill. I am very glad that I didn't. This Gramberg mill, yes, it's aluminum. Yes, they machined it. Yes, you could probably make this yourself or something similar. I would not do that. And the reason is vibration and torque. Once you start Alaskan milling, you will very much appreciate something that is machined by engineers. Even if you are an engineer, I still would not make one yourself. But, to each his own. So anyway, enough with the opinions. Let me move on to the saw. This is a 2007 Craftsman 40cc homeowner saw. And the reason I say homeowner is because this is not a professional saw by any means. I'm sure there's an arborist or two that's going to watch this and be like, yeah, no one ever uses those. And I would never be caught dead because everyone would make fun of me if I used that. So anyway, great saw to start off with, inexpensive. I think I bought this for less than the mill cost in 2007, and again, it was used. And by used, I mean lightly used. There's the running joke that Sears is a rent-a-center. I'm pretty sure somebody bought it, used it once, brought it back, said it didn't work, and got me like a 10 to 15% discount off of retail. So I'll take it. 40 cc's, which is good enough to Alaskan mill with. Anything lower than that is probably going to suck, and you're going to be down to a 16-inch bar most likely, which really isn't going to yield too much in the sense of slabs or lumber. At an 18-inch bar, you get okay lumber. It's really good as a starter saw and really good for like a small hobbyist. We'll get into the saw behind it and the reasons for getting that. But basically it comes down to wanting to mill larger diameter trees to get larger slabs. Homeowner saw, again, is good to start with because it's low powered and generally light. The low power gives you time where you really have to work slow with this. The bar heats up really, really quickly. It's underpowered, so if you're going through heavy hardwoods like oak or ash or anything like that, you have to take your time. I've had to stop between, like, you saw a foot to 2 feet into a log and then have to stop and let the bar cool off. Otherwise it gets too hot and you'll burn it, which is why this has an organ bar on it. Instead of a Craftsman, I burnt the original bar that came with this by running it all the way through something and not letting the bar cool, and it ruined the bar and the chain. So anyone that's thinking about getting into this, you can do it inexpensively, but know that there will be costs and there will be ongoing costs. You will be buying new chains. You will most likely have to buy a new bar depending on how much you do. So, Alaskan mill, homeowner saw, good to go for, you know, getting started. The way this works is you attach the mill to the bar. I do not recommend carrying it like this, but I'm doing it for this purpose. Then the mill slides onto a rail. I made mine. You can buy one. Granberg makes one. I think there's a couple other companies that make rails. The rail sits on top of the log. This one is made out of bed frame and ash. The ash is joint planed, so it is perfectly square, or it was at one point in time. And then it is screwed into the angled iron from a bed frame. This has worked really well, actually. And then the inner piece is more narrow than the whole frame, and that is because logs are generally round, and that way it sits on the crown of the log, so you get a little height. It does make the overall height of the rail a little thicker, but that's okay because they're very adjustable. You can loosen the two bolts right there on that U-nut, and the whole mill will slide up or down on that post. It's much easier when you have the saw on the ground or on a table to do that. But for here, we're just going to show you how this works. So you take it, you turn your saw on, you start running it, you slide your mill toward the wood, your saw is running, and now you begin to cut. Obviously there's a handle here, you left hand on the saw, right hand on this, and you just kind of push it through. I generally have the logs elevated on one end. This is in my shop, so this is definitely not how I would ever mill this, but just to give you an idea, one end would be elevated, and then I let gravity and the saw and the sharp chain do the work. So the first cut, you use the rail, then you take the rail off, because now underneath you are going to have a nice flat cut to run your mill on as your guide. And then you will adjust after the first cut, because you're going to want to adjust the height of the mill so that this gap right here is whatever thickness you want your slab to be. Generally, I mill it 2 inches thick, depending on how big the log is or what kind of material I need for later on. Sometimes it's 4 inches thick, especially if I'm going to use something for legs and I don't want to do a glue up. So I'll do it at 4 inches thick. That being said, we'll get into drying times in the other video, but the rule of thumb is for every inch of thickness is 1 year of drying time. And that's air drying. I do not have a kiln. You know, if you have a kiln or can get access to a kiln, that will change things dramatically. I air dry for the most part, so I have to plan ahead, years in ahead, or in ahead, whatever. So anyway, that's it. That's the Alaskan mill setup. That is my first setup. I think total cost in was probably about $200 to $300 with the mill, the chainsaw. I think I had 2 or 3 chains at that time, and then I bought, you know, files and a Granberg chain sharpening jig, which is a massive money saver once you learn how to sharpen your own chains, because you can make them last a lot longer, and you're not using a grinder, so you get a better touch. Like all tools, you want to keep them as sharp as possible, that way they do the best work. And yeah, that pretty much sums it up for the intro to what an Alaskan mill is, how I started, yeah, tool wise, and yeah, that's that. And the next video will be about the big boy in the back there, and we'll talk about what the differences are.